morning everyone. I'm clearly in a very forgetful mood today. I forgot to put all of my earrings in and I forgot my extra batteries for my camera, so I'm going to film as much as I can. Wanted to come out on a foraging walk today to one of my favourite places near Canterbury. There's a really amazing, very vast woodland here with lots of different plants and different mushrooms that grow, so I thought we'd have a wander, see what we can forage in August. As you can see, the woodland is super dry. We all know that we're in a drought at the moment. These are all sweet chestnut trees around me. They're all kind of shedding their leaves already, which feels very early, and I would imagine that that's just because they are trying to reserve some of that energy back to their root system, which means drawing energy out of the leaves. It's a very noisy plane. I wanted to talk to you about this first plant that we're looking at down here, which a lot of you may recognise. So this plant growing here is called herb Bennet, or you may also know it as the wood Avens. It is a medicinal herb or shrub, and it's quite renowned for having these sort of, the seed heads are like little hooks, but they're most renowned for sort of their roots. They taste and smell as well as have the same sort of medicinal properties as clove. So really nice smell to them, but also very good sort of numbing agent. So you would use it like you would clove. So if you've got toothache, for instance, you would apply it, make it into sort of a paste and put that in your mouth. Just because of its lovely smell and taste, you can also put it into cooking. So I very recently put this into some sort of pancakes that I made on that ethnobotany course that I was on. So yeah, really good one to know, and quite easily distinguished once you recognise the seed heads and you recognise that smell from the roots. Really nice find first thing this morning. It is hard not to feel a little bit sad seeing the forest so dry. We all know that summer is a very dry period, we don't get as much rain, but it just feels incredibly dry at the moment, and therefore there's just not much growing, and the stuff that is growing is really struggling. So just behind me here we've got a Rowan tree, and there's a few puny little berries on it. It is a very young tree by the looks of it. If you watched my videos earlier in the year, I'm following the Ogham calendar, which is basically a calendar of trees. So every month, and the energy of each month is harnessed into a particular tree. And Rowan was the tree of February, I think. Key sort of characteristics. As the tree matures a bit, this is obviously a very young one, but the bark of a Rowan tends to have quite a lot of lichen growing on it. So you kind of see these little white splotches on it. And it also has sort of horizontal sort of slashes in it. It also has these leaves that grow in paired opposites, and they're very sort of thin, narrow leaves. The berries, which come out in autumn, and the berries themselves, they are edible. These ones aren't quite ripe yet because they're still quite orange. They need to go quite red, and you should be able to crush it quite easily in your fingers for it to be ripe and ready to eat. But you want to cook them before using them. You don't want to be eating Rowan berries raw, that's going to upset your stomach. You can make them into jellies and different bits and pieces. I do intend to maybe make something with them this year because there's a couple of trees in the village where I live and they've got loads of berries. So in terms of its energy, it's also known as the mountain ash tree. It likes to grow on new grounds, or it's quite good at sort of growing on shallow grounds, so like the side of a mountain, for instance. They're therefore planted quite often in industrial estates and stuff because it's very good at sort of putting its roots into a new soil and can kind of grow and thrive there quite easily. A bit like the silver birch tree, which is also a pioneer species. Keep an eye out. If you live in a new build estate, you probably have got these growing around you. They are quite a common one. So look out for the berries this autumn and maybe give them a go in some baking. So just behind me down here is another plant that I learned on my ethnobotany course. I'm just going to pick some to show you. So this, you may look at it and just think, this looks like a stinging nettle, but it's got a different head to it. And it's not a stinging nettle. This is called woundwort. It's characterised, so if you were to feel the leaves of this plant, they're quite hairy, just like a stinging nettle would be, except they've got stings. And then if you were to crumple up the leaf, so let's try and put it up to the mic, it makes quite a crinkly noise. And then if you were to smell that, it smells to me like a church or something, like something really old. But as the name suggests, woundwort, this is a medicinal plant and can be used to heal different ailments. You could put it into a tincture and maybe apply it to bruises. Can't remember if it's a carpenter's herb, which would mean that it staunches bleeding. It might be, I will double check that. Definitely a plant that's worth having in your medicine cabinet, but it is one that's growing quite abundantly still at the moment. It's obviously very dry, the flowers are all sort of dried out from it. It's that smell and the texture of the leaves which is your key giveaway with this. So we've actually come back to the village because my camera battery died, which we knew was going to happen, but hey, here we are. And the next plant I wanted to show you and discuss was this one just behind me over here. So let's take a closer look. So this plant just here is called Pendular Sedge. And it might look like it's part of like the grass family because it's got all these, it's very tall like grass, and it's got these sort of long leaves on it which are a bit grass-like. However, it is not. That's actually a reason why it was so reliable and dependable back in the days when we used to make bread from hand and stuff. So it was reliable and easy to forage. And what's worth knowing, because it's not in the grass family, is that it will not therefore contain a fungus called ergot. Now ergot is a fungus that grows in grass and like wheat and stuff, and it basically makes you go crazy. If you remember like the Salem witch trials and stuff, if you're into your history, it was kind of believed that all of that was sort of influenced by people who had accidentally eaten bread made with wheat that contained ergot, and therefore made them a bit delusional. They might have visions and ultimately trip out and think that they were seeing things that they weren't. So Pendular Sedge, because it's not part of the grass family, therefore will not contain any ergot, so it was kind of a safe bet. And the seeds, which you can easily sort of pull away, these can be used, I think, to make a sort of bread. So yeah, it's a good sort of seed to use for bread making with no risk of ergot, which is a relief to know. And obviously nowadays we test all of our wheat and stuff, all the farmers would, as part of regulation, to make sure that we're not accidentally being fed bread contaminated with ergot. You can also just sort of toast them up and add them into things like your porridge, use them as a bit of a seed topper. It's also an ancient woodland indicator, which is a phrase that we like to use quite loosely. In certain parts of the country this might be more common and therefore not an ancient woodland indicator necessarily. Something that is forageable and edible, so worth knowing. Another tree that we couldn't not talk about today is the beautiful elder tree. So elder I think it used to be part of the rose family of plants because it has a lot of the key characteristics, but then it moved into a different family as time went on. It has sort of these nice paired leaves, so leaves that grow in opposite. It has lovely white flowers, which we foraged earlier in the season together, and you can make champagne from them, cordials. The flowers are also really good at helping with fevers, so it will help your body break out of a fever by helping to increase your temperature. The berries, however, which is what we will be foraging at this time of year, are also edible, but they must be cooked, which is really, really important to note. The berries themselves really nice and high in vitamin C, really great in preparation for those winter months which are coming up when we're probably going to be suffering from colds and different ailments. So I actually thought today that we could forage some of the berries together and make a tincture with them in preparation for winter. And I'll put some of my new tincture skills to use and I'll share with you how to make a wild tincture. It really is one of those plants or trees that is strongly associated with witches, as is the hawthorn tree. The elder and the hawthorn are sort of on par with each other in terms of their folklore and superstition that surrounds them. And it was believed that witches could embody a tree or a plant or like a familiar, it's one and the same, that they could basically embody a tree in order to hide from people during the witch trials and stuff. Elder had that association because it is such a medicinal plant. You can imagine that the witches back then, they were healers, they were the village healers, and therefore anything that was associated with them using plants as medicine was going to get a bad reputation, and therefore the elder was one of those trees that was associated with witches. And it is crazy really when you think about it. I think a lot of the reason why plant medicine became less and less used as time went on and less common knowledge is because people were so scared to learn it after the witch trials, because it was associated with witches, because the wise women of the village that were accused of being witches were the people who knew plant medicine and knew how to heal themselves with plants. Let's pick some lovely berries together and take them back to the house and make a tincture. And what we must do before we pick is we always ask the tree whether we can forage from it. Because of this belief and superstition with witches, it's always best to ask the tree first. Mother Elder, please can I pick from you? Also important to remember as you're picking that the tree itself, the leaves, the stems, they contain a compound which converts to cyanide once digested. So when we're making this tincture later, we'll make sure to remove as many of the berries from the stems as possible, because we don't really want the stems in there too. That would not be so good. I'm really, really chuffed that we have just found this plant down here. This is St. Johns Wort. Focus on that. There we go. True St. Johns Wort, easier to see with a magnifying glass, but it has like two little ridges along the edge of the stem. So I wanted to see if I could have a proper look. It does feel like it's got two ridges, but I might be wrong. So there are two kinds of St. Johns Wort, and this one is, I think this one might be the true St. Johns Wort, as I just said. But St. Johns Wort is really, really cool. It's a mood lifting plant, so you can actually buy it in places like Holland and Barrett in capsule form, taken as an antidepressant, I guess. I've actually previously taken it in the past when I've suffered with low mood, and I do think it can help when taken over a really long period of time. It's a lovely little plant and an easy one to remember as sort of a happy mood lifting plant because of its nice yellow colour. Some more Pendular Sedge growing just here. It really does grow everywhere around where I live. Hello! So, I thought may as well talk about this massive specimen behind me whilst we're here. Not necessarily one that I would bother foraging because I just can't be bothered for the faff of dealing with the thistles and the spikes. But yes, this is one of many thistles that we have in the UK. Don't ask me which, I'm not an expert on thistles, but what I do know is that thistles are part of the artichoke family, so they kind of do tend to taste a little bit like an artichoke. They're a bit salty in flavour. Really sorry if you can hear any noise in the background, by the way. I live near a huge castle and they have events on, and I have a feeling they've got jousting on or something at the moment because it's quite noisy over there. So sorry about that. But yeah, the whole thistle plant is edible, but the bit that you really want is this chunky stem. So the idea is that you would pick it and then you would cut off all of the serrated spiky parts, and then you would eat the centre of the stem. Another thing worth knowing about the thistle though is that it's these lovely fluffy seeds that it gives off when the flower heads die, so they're really, really great as a fire starter. So if you needed to get a fire going, they're obviously very dry and fluffy, so perfect sort of for bushcraft and survival there as well. Absolutely massive thistle, so couldn't not stop and talk about it. It's also a very pretty plant, I think. Onward we go, let's see what else we can find. Also, if you're not scoffing your face with blackberries every time you come out walking at the moment, what are you doing? They're so good. The jam I made in my most recent vlog, which you should definitely check out if you haven't watched, was so good. And it's set perfectly, so if you want a really easy recipe, follow that one, because I don't know, I seem to have smashed it unintentionally. Another lovely one here worth talking about is Gelder Rose. This is a plant that I always assumed was poisonous because it has these lovely shiny red berries, and whenever you see anything red in the foraging world you instantly think danger, which is usually what the plant is trying to get across. It's saying, please don't eat me, I'm poisonous. These seeds aren't ripe, they're obviously half yellow, you can see where the sun hasn't got to them, and red on the other side. So Gelder Rose, identifiable by these 3 pointed leaves that it has. It's 3 points to that leaf. And yeah, these red berries in the late summer, autumn. Berries are actually edible, but you do have to cook them. You could make them into jams or cordials, I'm sure. I've never actually made anything with them just yet, but once these ripen up, now I know I have a spot to come and forage them from, I may give it a go. Medicinally, Gelder Rose is called a cramp bark. So what that means is that the inner part of the bark is really good for sort of aching muscles and joints and stuff, so you can make tinctures from that, which is then quite soothing. So yeah, if you were going to pick off a bit of this, strip back the outer bark and get to the inner bark, that's where that sort of medicinal qualities are that will enable you to make a tincture with it. This one looks like it's been savaged by caterpillars. Look at that. It's very pretty actually. A work of art. Look at the size of these. Oh my goodness. I'm excited come autumn because this spot, all here, I get lots of shaggy Inkcaps, and Inkcaps, as the name suggests, they turn to ink, well, they deliquesce. So that means that the cap of the mushroom, yeah, it literally disintegrates into ink that you can actually write with. And I really want to make some art this year with the mushroom ink. Maybe paint some mushrooms with some mushrooms. So that's the plan. So I'm excited to forage some of them, but also to actually just eat some. You can make Inkcap soup. I have a Roger Phillips book, and he has a Inkcap soup recipe in there, which will probably be very black and probably not very appetizing to look at, but again, just something I want to try. So fingers crossed we get some rain soon, and then I can start foraging those. Got some mugwort here, which we've spoken about in previous videos. But mugwort, if you ingest it supposedly or sleep with it under your pillow, it's meant to induce lucid dreaming. So if you have any unanswered questions or things that you are being troubled with and don't know the answer to, the key is mugwort. Also quite nice aromatic, as I've mentioned in a previous video. Has a nice sagey smell to it, so you can use it as sort of a flavouring in things like breads. I think we're going to start making our way back now, and we'll make this tincture together.